James Harrison adjusted his formal military uniform as he surveyed the grand ballroom of Moonlight Plaza, Earth's premier diplomatic venue. The crystalline chandeliers cast rainbow refractions across the diverse gathering of humans and celestials below. As head of diplomatic security, he had overseen countless such functions, but tonight felt different. The celestials, with their luminescent silver skin and flowing robes that seemed to capture starlight itself, moved through the crowd with otherworldly grace. Their recent peace treaty with Earth had opened new possibilities for both species, though tension still simmered beneath the surface of forced politeness and diplomatic smiles. James's attention was suddenly drawn to a figure entering the grand staircase. Unlike the other celestials, whose skin tones ranged from pale silver to deep mercury, she possessed a unique opalescent quality that seemed to shift colors with every movement. Her eyes, a striking violet that bordered on impossible, met his across the room. Lady Valera, daughter of Ambassador Theron, had a reputation that preceded her. Unlike many celestial nobles who viewed humans with barely concealed disdain, she was known for her genuine interest in Earth culture and advocacy for closer ties between their species. What the rumors failed to mention was her breathtaking beauty. Maintaining appropriate security distance, Officer Harrison. The teasing voice of his second-in-command, Lieutenant Raina Chen, broke through his reverie. Professional observation, Lieutenant, James replied, though he couldn't quite hide his smile. The ambassador's daughter is a high-priority protectee. Of course, sir. And I'm sure your professional observation has nothing to do with her being the most eligible celestial noble this side of the galaxy. Before James could respond, a commotion near the buffet drew their attention. A group of anti-integration protesters had somehow infiltrated the event, their angry shouts shattering the elegant atmosphere. James moved instantly, his training taking over as he coordinated his team's response through their neural links. But Lady Valera was already there, her diplomatic training evident as she engaged the protesters with remarkable poise. Your concerns are valid, her melodic voice carried across the now silent room. Change is frightening. But isolation breeds fear, while understanding nurtures hope. Would you share your specific concerns with me? James positioned himself nearby, ready to intervene if needed, but found himself captivated by her handling of the situation. She listened to the protesters with genuine interest, addressing their fears about job displacement and cultural erosion with thoughtful responses and concrete solutions. The tension gradually dissipated as what began as a potential security threat transformed into an impromptu town hall discussion. James noticed Ambassador Theron watching from across the room, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. Impressive diplomatic skills, James commented as the protesters peacefully departed, escorted by his team. Valera turned, those impossible violet eyes meeting his directly. Sometimes the best security is simply listening, Officer Harrison. A smile played at the corners of her iridescent lips. Though I appreciate your readiness to protect us all. You know my name? James tried to maintain his professional demeanor despite the warmth spreading through his chest. I make it a point to know everyone who dedicates themselves to keeping peace between our peoples. She moved closer, her height matching his own, unusual for a celestial. Though I must admit, you've caught my attention for other reasons as well. The subtle scent of stardust and something impossibly exotic surrounded him. Up close, her skin was even more fascinating, like moonlight on moving water. Lady Valera, Please, just Valera. She gestured toward the garden terrace. Would you walk with me, Officer Harrison? I'd love to hear your perspective on human-celestial relations. James knew he should decline. Fraternization with protectees was strictly against protocol. But as she stood there, starlight streaming through the crystal windows creating a halo around her form, protocol seemed very far away. I'd be honored, he said, offering his arm in a gesture that bridged their cultural traditions. And please, call me James. As they stepped onto the terrace, neither could have known that this moment would change not just their lives, but the future of human-celestial relations forever. Above them, the stars twinkled with possibilities, while below, the city lights of New Geneva sparkled like earthbound constellations, bearing witness to the beginning of something extraordinary. 3 weeks after the Moonlight Plaza incident, James found himself increasingly drawn into Valera's orbit. Their initial garden conversation had led to casual encounters at diplomatic functions, then to private meetings disguised as security briefings. Each interaction deepened their connection, while simultaneously increasing the risk of discovery. Today, they met in the Botanical Archives, a vast greenhouse complex that housed specimens from both Earth and celestial worlds. The artificial sunlight filtered through exotic foliage, casting ever-shifting patterns across Valera's shimmering skin as she studied a rare flowering vine. "These remind me of the luminous gardens back home," she said, reaching out to touch a glowing blue petal. "Though nothing on Celestia quite matches Earth's raw, untamed beauty." Her eyes met his meaningfully. James stepped closer, conscious of the security cameras he'd temporarily looped. "Speaking of beauty, you never told me why your skin tone is different from other Celestials." Valera's expression softened. "My mother was from the Auroran bloodline, a rare genetic variation that appears once in several generations. It's considered a mark of destiny among my people." She paused, her violet eyes clouding. "She died during the First Contact Wars, before the peace treaty." "I'm sorry," James said softly, understanding now her passionate dedication to human-celestial relations. "Is that why you work so hard for integration?" "Partly." She moved closer, her ethereal scent enveloping him. "But mostly because I believe our species have so much to offer each other. Like how your human passion perfectly complements our celestial wisdom." Their fingers brushed, sending electric tingles up James's arm. The attraction between them had grown impossible to ignore, despite the numerous regulations and cultural taboos they were breaking. "We're playing a dangerous game," James murmured, though he made no move to step away. "Your father is hosting a private dinner tomorrow night," Valera interrupted, her iridescent lips curving in a smile. "He's quite impressed with your handling of recent security matters and wishes to discuss increasing cooperation between our species." James raised an eyebrow. "And this invitation has nothing to do with a certain ambassador's daughter?" "I merely suggested that someone with your unique perspective on human-celestial relations would make an interesting dinner guest." Her smile turned mischievous. "Though I won't deny having personal motives as well." Their moment was interrupted by James's neural link chirping. Lieutenant Chen's voice filled his mind. "Sir, we have a situation at the embassy. Anti-integration extremists are threatening to expose classified documents about celestial genetic research." Valera must have received similar news through her own communications device, as her expression shifted to concern. "The research they're threatening to expose, it's about cross-species compatibility. My father's been funding secret studies." James's professional training kicked in. "How sensitive is this information?" "Explosive," she whispered. "The studies suggest humans and Celestials are far more compatible than anyone imagined. Some traditionalists on both sides would rather start a war than allow such possibilities." Their eyes met, understanding passing between them. This wasn't just about them anymore, the peace between their species hung in the balance. "I need to get to the embassy," James said, already calculating response scenarios. "We'll contain this." Valera caught his arm. "James, there's more. The research, it's not just theoretical. There have been successful cases of human-celestial pairs producing offspring. My father's been protecting these families, keeping them hidden from both governments." The implications staggered him. No wonder the extremists were willing to go so far. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I trust you," she said simply. "And because..." She hesitated, then continued in a rush, "I've been experiencing unusual symptoms lately. Symptoms that match the early stages of cross-species pregnancy." James felt the world tilt on its axis. Their few intimate encounters had been carefully planned around what they believed to be biologically safe periods. "Are you sure?" "Not entirely," she admitted. "But if I am, it would explain why my father's been receiving death threats. Someone must suspect." The neural link chirped again, more urgently this time. James made a quick decision. "Come with me to the embassy. We'll deal with the crisis, then figure this out together." As they hurried through the botanical archives, James couldn't help but marvel at how complicated his life had become. Just weeks ago, his biggest concern had been maintaining proper diplomatic security protocols. Now he was possibly going to be the first publicly known human father of a human celestial child. The artificial sun began its programmed descent, casting long shadows through the exotic foliage. Above them, through the greenhouse's transparent dome, the first stars of evening began to appear, silent witnesses to a love that might just change the course of two civilizations. The New Geneva Celestial Embassy rose before them like a twisted spire of living metal, its surface reflecting the setting sun in waves of gold and crimson. James and Valera arrived to find the building in lockdown, security forces from both species forming a perimeter around anti-integration protesters. Lieutenant Chen met them at a secure entrance, her usually composed features tight with concern. "Sir, the situation's escalated. The extremists have broadcast snippets of the research data across public channels. Media outlets are already speculating about human celestial hybrid children." James felt Valera tense beside him. Through the glass walls of the embassy atrium, they could see Ambassador Theron pacing in his private office, his silver skin almost metallic under the harsh emergency lighting. "I need to speak with my father," Valera said, her voice steady despite the tremor James detected in her hand. "Alone. I'll handle crowd control and media containment," James nodded, squeezing her hand briefly when no one was looking. "But first, we need to secure that research data." "Where's it stored?" "The complete files are in my father's private vault," Valera replied. "But James, there's something you should know. The research wasn't just about proving compatibility. It was about enhancing it. My mother, she was part of the original experiment." The revelation hit James like a physical blow. "Your unique genetics are the result of deliberate engineering, yes. The Auroran bloodline was created to bridge the gap between our species. I am living proof that humans and Celestials are meant to be more than diplomatic allies." Before James could process this, Ambassador Theron's voice boomed through the atrium. "Daughter. Officer Harrison. My office. Now." The walk to Theron's office felt like crossing a battlefield. Embassy staff, both human and celestial, watched them pass with undisguised curiosity. News traveled fast in diplomatic circles, and the leaked research had already sparked widespread speculation. Ambassador Theron stood at his window, his tall frame silhouetted against the chaos below. When he turned, his expression was unreadable. "I assume, Officer Harrison, that my daughter has informed you of her condition?" James straightened, military training taking over. "Yes, Ambassador. And I want you to know that I—" "Spare me your noble human declarations," Theron interrupted, though his tone held more weariness than anger. "What you two have done, it's both a miracle and a potential catastrophe." "Father," Valera stepped forward, her opalescent skin glowing with emotion. "The extremists releasing this information might be a blessing in disguise. The public deserves to know the truth about our compatibility." "The truth?" Theron laughed bitterly. "The truth is that I've spent decades protecting families like yours from both human and celestial persecution. The truth is that your mother died not in the contact wars, but in a laboratory, ensuring that you would be born with the ability to safely bear human children." James moved protectively closer to Valera, diplomatic protocol forgotten. "Sir, with respect, this changes nothing about how I feel about your daughter." "Feelings?" Theron's eyes flashed. This isn't about feelings, Officer Harrison. This is about the survival of both our species. The protesters outside? They're nothing compared to the conservative factions in the Celestial High Council. They would rather see Earth burn to ash than allow our bloodlines to mix. A commotion outside drew their attention. The protesters had breached the first security line, their angry chants echoing through the embassy walls. "We don't have much time," Theron said, suddenly urgent. "The research in my vault isn't just data, it's a blueprint for perfect human-celestial genetic compatibility. In the wrong hands, it could be used to create biological weapons targeting either species. Then we destroy it," James suggested, but Valera shook her head. "No, we reveal it. All of it. Let both species see that we're not just compatible, we're complementary. My mother didn't die for this knowledge to be hidden or destroyed." Theron studied his daughter, seeing perhaps for the first time not just his child, but a leader in her own right. "You understand what you're asking? Going public means no protection, no hiding. You and your child will become symbols, targets for every extremist on both sides. Better to live in dangerous truth than safe lies," Valera declared, taking James's hand openly. "Besides, I have the best security officer in the diplomatic corps to protect me." A massive explosion rocked the building before Theron could respond. James's neural link erupted with urgent reports. The protesters had detonated some kind of electromagnetic pulse device, shorting out the embassy's security systems. "The vault," Theron said urgently. "We need to secure that data before." Another explosion cut him off, closer this time. Through the smoke now filling the corridor, shadowy figures appeared, moving with military precision. "They're not just protesters," James realized, drawing his service weapon. "This is a coordinated attack." Valera's hand pressed against her abdomen, a protective gesture that made James's heart clench. Their child, proof of everything possible between their species, was now in danger before it had even been officially confirmed. As alarms blared and chaos erupted around them, James made a silent vow. He would protect not just Valera and their unborn child, but the future they represented. A future where love transcended species, where differences bred strength rather than hatred. The attackers were getting closer. James could hear Lieutenant Chen organizing a defensive position in the atrium. They had mere minutes to decide: hide the truth and maintain a fragile peace, or embrace the chaos of change and fight for a future without boundaries. Valera's violet eyes met his, and in them he saw the same determination he felt. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Smoke filled the embassy corridors as James led Valera and Ambassador Theron through a maintenance passage, his neural link providing real-time updates from Lieutenant Chen's defense of the atrium. The attackers had split into two groups, one engaging the embassy's security forces while the other methodically moved toward the vault level. "They're too well organized for simple extremists," James observed, checking around a corner. "Someone with military training is coordinating this attack." "The purest faction," Theron growled, his silver skin dimmed with stress. "They have supporters in both human and celestial military structures. I always knew they'd make a move, but not like this." Valera's opalescent skin pulsed with a subtle glow, a celestial stress response that made her even more beautiful in James's eyes. "The vault has a quantum encryption lock. Even if they breach it, they can't access the data without your genetic signature," Theron finished. "Why do you think they waited to attack until you were here?" James's combat training kicked into higher gear. "They're not just after the research. They want you, Valera." A burst of weapons fire from above forced them to duck into an alcove. Through his neural link, James heard Lieutenant Chen's voice: "Sir, they've breached the second floor. They're using some kind of hybrid tech, human weapons modified with celestial energy cells. Can you hold them?" James asked, already knowing the answer. "Negative. We need to evacuate the ambassador and Lady Valera immediately. James studied the building schematics through his neural display. The diplomatic shuttle bay is 2 levels down. If we can reach it. No, Valera interrupted, her violet eyes blazing with sudden determination. I'm tired of running, of hiding what we are. This ends tonight. Before either James or Theron could stop her, she stepped out of the alcove and raised her voice. I am Valera, daughter of Ambassador Theron and Lady Aurora. I carry within me the future of both our species, and I will not hide in shame. Her voice, amplified by some innate celestial ability, echoed through the embassy. The weapon's fire ceased momentarily, and in that silence, James heard boot strips approaching from multiple directions. Valera, he moved to her side, weapon ready. What are you doing? What my mother died for, she replied, her skin now glowing bright enough to illuminate the smoke-filled corridor. The truth must be faced, not hidden. Ambassador Theron's expression shifted from fear to pride. Like her mother, always. Officer Harrison, protect her. I'll handle the vault. Father, no. But Theron was already moving, his diplomatic robes swirling as he headed toward the vault level. The research was never about creating weapons or perfect hybrids. It was about proving that love, real love, transcends all biological barriers. Your mother knew that. Now everyone else will too. The first of the attackers appeared at both ends of the corridor, a mix of humans and celestials in black tactical gear. Their weapons trained on Valera, but none fired. Lady Valera, their leader, stepped forward, a human with cold eyes and a commander's bearing. You're an abomination. Your very existence threatens the purity of both our species. I am the future, Valera replied, her voice carrying that same supernatural resonance. Look at me. Really look. I'm not human or celestial, I'm both, and neither. I'm proof that we can be more than our separate parts. James noticed something extraordinary happening. Valera's natural glow was intensifying, taking on the rainbow qualities he'd first noticed at Moonlight Plaza. But now, the light seemed to reach out, touching each person in the corridor. The Auroran gift, he heard Theron whisper from somewhere behind them. Like her mother. The attackers' weapons wavered as Valera's light enveloped them. Where it touched their skin, human or celestial, it left behind a faint, shimmering residue. Your genetic tampering ends here, the commander snarled, fighting against whatever effect Valera was creating. The research will be destroyed, and you with it. The research doesn't matter anymore, Valera said softly, one hand pressed to her abdomen while the other found James's hand. I carry the living proof of everything my parents worked for. Every cell in my body, every cell in my child's body, carries the message, love finds a way. The light pulsing from her skin suddenly flared brilliant white, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When it faded, James saw that every person in the corridor, attacker and defender alike, bore traces of opalescent shimmer on their skin. What did you do to us? The commander stared at his gleaming hands in horror. Showed you what you really are, Valera smiled. Human DNA naturally contains traces of celestial markers, and celestial genetics carry human sequences. We didn't need engineering to make us compatible. We always were. The research only activated what was already there. Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled through James's neural link, Sir, you need to see this. The protesters outside, they're all glowing. Through the embassy's windows, James could see the truth of it. Every person within range of Valera's light display now bore the same shimmering marks, physical proof of their shared genetic heritage. Impossible, the commander whispered, but his weapons had lowered. James pulled Valera close, feeling the warm pulse of energy still radiating from her skin. Not impossible. Inevitable. Like us. 6 months after the embassy incident, James stood at the same spot in Moonlight Plaza where he'd first met Valera. The Grand Ballroom had been transformed for a different kind of diplomatic function, the first official celebration of Human Celestial Unity Day. The aftermath of Valera's revelation had reshaped both societies in ways no one could have predicted. The shimmering marks left by her Auroran gift had faded within days, but the truth they revealed couldn't be denied. Genetic testing across both populations confirmed what Valera's mother had discovered years ago: humans and Celestials shared ancient genetic markers, suggesting a common ancestry lost to time. Admiring the view again, Officer Harrison? Valera's melodic voice pulled him from his thoughts. She approached with characteristic grace, her opalescent skin glowing with the healthy radiance of impending motherhood. Her formal dress, a stunning fusion of human and celestial design, elegantly accommodated her growing belly. Just remembering, he smiled, taking her hand. Hard to believe it's only been 6 months since that first night. When you were professionally observing me? Her violet eyes sparkled with amusement. As I recall, you were doing some observing of your own. Their playful moment was interrupted by Ambassador Theron's arrival. The events at the embassy had aged him, silver hair now streaked with white, but his bearing remained proud. The delegates are ready for the ceremony. The Grand Ballroom had filled with representatives from both species, including many of the mixed couples who had been living in hiding. Among them, James spotted the former commander of the attack force, now one of their strongest advocates after his own celestial heritage had been confirmed. Father, Valera touched Theron's arm. Have you decided if you'll speak about Mother? Yes. Theron's expression softened. Aurora's research deserves to be known. Her sacrifice made all of this possible. The ceremony itself was brief but powerful. One by one, couples came forward to share their stories, tales of love that had persisted despite prejudice and fear. James and Valera's turn came last. My mother believed that love was the force that drove evolution itself. Valera addressed the gathered crowd, her voice carrying that subtle resonance that marked her Auroran heritage. That when two hearts truly connect, biology finds a way to follow. James took over, his hand protectively cradling Valera's abdomen. What happened at the embassy proved that we're not just compatible by accident or engineering. We're compatible because, at our core, we're the same. Different branches of the same cosmic tree. And now, Valera continued, we have a chance to grow new branches together. As if in response to her words, James felt a strong kick against his palm. The baby, their daughter, was particularly active during diplomatic functions, a trait that amused both families to no end. Lieutenant Chen, now head of the Joint Human-Celestial Security Force, approached with urgent news. The vote just came in. Both councils have approved the Integration Act. All restrictions on human-celestial relationships have been officially lifted. A cheer went up from the crowd, and James pulled Valera close, mindful of her condition. Above them, through Moonlight Plaza's crystal dome, the first stars of evening appeared, the same stars that had witnessed their first meeting. You know, Valera murmured against his chest, Mother's research had one other component that we haven't made public yet. Oh? Apparently, the Auroran bloodline carries certain enhancements to lifespan. Our daughter won't just be a bridge between our species. She'll be able to carry that bridge forward for generations. James processed this new information, understanding its implications. So you're saying that you're stuck with us for a very, very long time. Her violet eyes met his, full of love and mischief. I hope that's not a problem, Officer Harrison. He answered her with a kiss, no longer caring about diplomatic protocol or who might be watching. Around them, the celebration continued, but in that moment, their world narrowed to just the three of them, human, celestial, and the future they'd created together. Ambassador Theron watched from a distance, a bittersweet smile on his face. He touched the pendant he always wore, which contained a hologram of his late wife. You were right, Aurora, he whispered. Love does find a way. As the evening drew to a close, James and Valera slipped away to the same garden terrace where they'd first talked. The city of New Geneva spread out below them, its lights now mingling with the natural bioluminescence of celestial architecture, a perfect blend of both worlds. "What do you think she'll be like?" James wondered aloud, his hand never leaving Valera's abdomen. "Our daughter?" "Beautiful," Valera answered without hesitation. "Strong. A bridge between stars." She paused, then added with a laugh, "and hopefully not as stubborn as her father about asking for what he wants." James grinned, reaching into his pocket. "I don't know about that. I did manage to ask your father for this." He opened his hand to reveal a ring that seemed to capture starlight itself, a band of human gold inlaid with celestial crystals. Valera's breath caught. "James. I know we've done everything backwards," he said softly. "And I know there are probably 100 diplomatic protocols we're breaking. But I love you, Valera. You and our daughter are my stars, my home, my future." Tears like liquid moonlight traced down Valera's cheeks as she held out her hand. "Yes," she whispered. "1,000 times yes." As James slipped the ring onto her finger, a shooting star traced across the sky above New Geneva, a final blessing from a universe that had conspired to bring them together. Their love story had changed two worlds, but for James and Valera, the greatest adventure was still to come. In the years that followed, their daughter would indeed become a bridge between stars, but that's another story entirely.